It is 2 a.m. in Berlin, and you are sitting on the U-Bahn, watching the tunnels blur past in streaks of dirty yellow light. The car is mostly empty, save for a few stragglers coming home from the clubs, their laughter echoing a little too loudly against the sterile tile walls. You are not coming from a club, or perhaps you are, but the feeling inside you is not joy, nor is it the pleasant fatigue of a night well spent. It is a profound, vibrating hollowness. You feel as though you have been scraped clean, as if the very marrow of your personality has been scooped out with a spoon, leaving only a thin, brittle shell that might crack if someone asks you one more question. You look at your reflection in the darkened glass, the tired eyes, the slight slump of the shoulders, and you wonder, not for the first time, what is wrong with you? Why does human connection, the very thing that is supposed to nourish the soul, feel like it is harvesting yours? Why does a simple dinner party leave you feeling as though you have run a marathon through waist-deep mud? This specific brand of exhaustion is difficult to explain to those who do not carry it. It is not that you dislike people. In fact, you might love them deeply. You might be the person everyone turns to for advice, the listener, the empathy sponge who absorbs the emotional runoff of the entire room. But the cost of this absorption is a debt that you pay in silence, alone, often days later. You feel like a failed machine, an alien consciousness operating a human suit that runs out of battery hours before everyone else's. You watch others, the naturals, navigate the social currents with the ease of dolphins, feeding on the energy of the crowd, becoming brighter, louder, and more alive as the night goes on. Meanwhile, you are fading. You are calculating the socially acceptable time to exit. You are physically present, but your soul has already retreated to a quiet room in the back of your mind, locked the door, and turned off the lights. To understand this drainage, to stop viewing it as a defect and start seeing it as a design feature, we must leave the neon-lit streets of the modern city and descend into the ancient biological architecture of your nervous system. You are not antisocial, and you are likely not depressed. You are experiencing a mismatch between your evolutionary hardware and the operating system of the 21st century. Let us consider the biological reality of high associative thinking and the reticular activating system. Your brain filters the world differently. For the majority, the neurotypicals, or the extroverted baseline, the reticular activating system, the gatekeeper of sensory input, is fairly tight. It filters out the background noise, the subtle shifts in tone, the flickering light in the corner, the hum of the refrigerator. They need high levels of stimulation to feel awake. They need the loud music, the fast-paced conversation, the constant ping of novelty to reach their baseline of dopamine. But you? Your gatekeeper is porous. You are taking in everything. When you are in a conversation, you are not just listening to the words. You are processing the micro-expressions on the other person's face, the slight inflection of sadness in their voice, the subtext of what they are not saying. You are noticing the temperature of the room, the texture of the chair, the smell of coffee and stale perfume. You are processing a tsunami of data every single second. This is what we call deep processing. Your brain is running a high-level algorithm, cross-referencing every new piece of information with every memory, emotion, and pattern you have ever stored. This is why you are often the one to offer the most profound insight 3 days after the argument. You were still processing the data. This intensity of processing is metabolically expensive. The brain consumes 20% of the body's energy, but for you, during social interaction, that number spikes. You are burning glucose at a rate that the skimmers, the people who surf the surface of interaction, cannot comprehend. The drain you feel is a literal biological resource depletion. Furthermore, we must look at the neurotransmitter dopamine. In the extroverted brain, dopamine is a reward chemical triggered by external stimulation. The more people, the more noise, the more risk, the more dopamine. It feels good. In the introverted or highly sensitive brain, the dopamine pathway is shorter and more easily overwhelmed. You do not need much dopamine to feel satisfied. In fact, too much dopamine triggers a stress response. You effectively overdose on stimulation. Your nervous system switches from approach to retreat to protect you from frying your circuits. Evolutionarily, this makes perfect sense. We are taught to believe that the alpha human was the loud hunter, the one leading the charge. But a tribe of only hunters would have been extinct within a generation. The tribe also needed the sentinels. The sentinels were the ones who stayed on the periphery, the ones who noticed the subtle shift in the wind that indicated a predator, the ones who could sense the storm coming before the clouds gathered. They were the pattern matchers. They needed to be highly sensitive to their environment to ensure the survival of the group. You are the descendant of the sentinels. Your drain is the system resetting itself after a period of intense vigilance. You were not built for the constant low-grade chaos of the modern open-plan office or the crowded bar. You were built for long periods of quiet observation punctuated by moments of crucial insight. However, the tragedy of your existence lies in the fact that we have built a world that has forgotten the value of the sentinel. We live in a society that fetishizes the extrovert ideal. Since the Industrial Revolution and accelerating wildly with the rise of corporate America, Western culture has shifted from a culture of character to a culture of personality. Character was about what you did in the dark. Personality is about how you perform in the light. We have created an economic system where social enthusiasm is a form of currency. We are told that we must be team players, that we must network, that we must always be on. This brings us to the crushing weight of hustle culture and the commodification of the human soul. We are living in a digital panopticon where silence is viewed as suspicion. In the corporate world, the person who sits quietly in the meeting, thinking deeply, is often viewed as disengaged or not a culture fit. The person who speaks the most, regardless of the quality of their ideas, is viewed as a leader. We have conflated volume with value. We have conflated visibility with competence. This creates a terrifying pressure for you to perform a personality that is not your own. You spend your days wearing a mask of enthusiastic engagement, feigning excitement about quarterly reports, forcing small talk near the coffee machine because you know that social capital is the only way to survive. This performance is the source of the deepest drain. It is not just the interaction that tires you, it is the acting. It is the suppression of your true nature. You are constantly monitoring your own behavior. Am I smiling enough? Am I making enough eye contact? Do I look weird? While simultaneously processing the environment. You are running two operating systems at once, the internal sentinel and the external performer. No wonder you are exhausted. You are burning the candle at both ends and the middle is melting too. This is the sunk cost fallacy of the social self. You feel you have invested so much in being normal that to stop now would be to admit defeat. You fear that if you drop the mask, you will be revealed as boring, cold, or empty. But this fear is a lie sold to you by a world that wants to monetize your attention. The emptiness you feel when you are alone is not a void. It is a clearing. It is the space where the silt settles and the water becomes clear. You are not drained because you are broken. You are drained because you are a deep sea diver forced to live in a kiddie pool. Consider the metaphor of the plankton feeder versus the predator. The shark must constantly move, constantly hunt, constantly interact with the environment to survive. It is a creature of kinetic energy. But the great whale, the filter feeder, moves slowly. It takes in massive amounts of water, filtering out the nutrients, and expelling the rest. You are a filter feeder of the human experience. You take in the massive, complex ocean of emotional data. You need time to filter. When you are constantly forced to swim at the speed of the shark, you cannot filter. You become clogged. You become heavy. The drain is the feeling of a filter that is blocked with too much debris. The danger of ignoring this need to decompress is that you begin to engage in synaptic pruning of the wrong kind. When the brain is stressed and overstimulated, it defaults to primitive survival pathways. You lose your creativity. You lose your empathy. You become cynical, brittle, and resentful. You start to view people not as complex beings, but as obstacles to your peace. This is the shadow side of the sentinel, the hermit who hates the village he was born to protect. So how do we navigate this? How do we exist as deep-sea creatures in a surface-level world? The answer lies not in retreat, but in architecture. You must build a life that honors the physics of your own energy. This begins with the sacred pause. You must stop apologizing for your battery. When you say, "I need to be alone," Do not offer an excuse. Do not invent a headache or a fake deadline. State it as a biological fact, as neutral as saying, I need to drink water. You are reclaiming the dignity of your own limits. You need to embrace the concept of the third place within your own mind. If you cannot physically escape the party or the office, you must learn to mentally disengage. You must learn the art of the soft gaze. In meditation, a soft gaze is when you look at nothing in particular, allowing the peripheral vision to open. You can do this socially. You can stop projecting energy outward and simply let the world wash over you without grabbing onto it. You can be the rock in the river, letting the water flow around you, rather than trying to be the river itself. This leads us to a necessary rebellion against the always-on culture. You must curate your availability. In a world of instant notifications, being unreachable is the ultimate act of luxury and self-respect. You must create air gaps in your day, moments where you are disconnected from the grid of human expectation. This is where the alchemy of synthesis happens. It is in the silence that the conversations you had 3 days ago finally make sense. It is in the solitude that the random data points connect into wisdom. You need the silence not just to rest, but to become who you are. The Western world tells us that the oak tree is the ideal, strong, immovable, constantly visible, always there. But perhaps you are the night blooming cereus, a flower that blooms only in the dark for a few hours, once a year. The beauty of that bloom is intensified by its rarity. Your social energy is precious because it is finite. When you do choose to shine, when you do choose to engage, it is a focused beam, not a scattered light. Think of the lighthouse. The lighthouse does not run around the island looking for boats to save. It does not wade into the water to shake hands with the waves. It stands on the rock. It keeps its structure solid. And it revolves. It has periods of light and periods of dark. Dark, light. Dark, light. The darkness is just as important as the light. Without the interval of darkness, the light is not a signal. It is just a constant, blinding glare. You have been trying to be a floodlight, illuminating everything, all the time, burning out your bulb. But you were built to be a lighthouse. The drain you feel is the warning signal that your rotation has stopped. You are stuck in the on position. You need to let the darkness swing back around. You need to stand on your rock and trust that the boats will see you, especially when you are silent. So the next time you feel that crushing weight after a social gathering, do not hate yourself. Do not look in the mirror and see a failure. See a sentinel who has finished their watch. See a diver who has returned from the deep. Go home. Lock the door. Turn off the phone. Pull the blanket over your head. And in that beautiful, velvet silence, feel your soul knitting itself back together, synapse by synapse, until you are whole again. You are not broken. You are just recharging for the next revolution of the light.